One.
Hi everyone. Welcome to our presentation. My name is Caitlin, and we are part of the Branch Out program. We're working with the Lemon Project for their symposium about Black women through the centuries. So our woman, as you can tell by the background, perhaps is in the Jim Crow eras, and so it's mostly around the 1920s. That our two women were alive and thriving. So one of the women that I researched was named Madam C.J. Walker. And so she was the first female self-made millionaire of her time. She was one of the wealthiest Black women during the 1920s. She had her total worth of about $1 million, and at that time was just a huge amount of money that she had. She had all these houses in different places, and she was very, very well off. But she started in a very poor part. She was actually the child of two slaves in Louisiana. And so she had to go from there. She started in Louisiana and then moved to Missouri to try to get a new life and to create her new life there. So after she was orphaned at the age of 6, she moved to Missouri. She had a husband at the time and then divorced, and she was living in Missouri at around 1904 and found this hair loss grower that a woman named Annie Turbo Malone called the Great Wonderful Hair Grower, and she took that and ran with it. She launched her own line with only $1.25 to her name, a new husband named Charles Joseph Walker, and renamed herself Madam C.J. Walker with her Madam C.J. Walker's Wonderful Hair Grower. And from there, she created an empire. She created almost 40,000 jobs for African American women and men in the U.S., Central America, and the Caribbean. She founded the National Negro Cosmetic Manufacturer Association in 1917. She created all these different jobs called beauty culturalists to really focus on the Black heritage that she was selling for. And so she really created this Walker system, as it was known, and created all these jobs for Black people in particular. And then she used her fortune to help others and contributed to the YMCA, covered tuition for 6 African Americans at Tuskegee Institute, and was a part of the anti-lynching movement and donated $5,000 to the NAACP's effort. And then at her death, she gave 2/3 of her fortune to charity and other thousands of dollars to other individuals and schools to help the Black community. So she was quite a woman of her time. So Sarah Breedlove was her original name, changed to Madam C.J. Walker, became this beauty empire that she created from the ground up. And then I will pass it off to Ria, who's my partner in this presentation.
Hey everyone, I'm Ria and I researched Gertrude Ma Rainey, who is also known as the Mother of the Blues. She was one of the earliest African American blues singer and is credited with the creation of what is now known as the classic blues, which is also a type of music. In her music, she basically portrays Black women like never before. Her song themes establish her as an independent and fearless woman, and her lyrics have alluded to her bisexuality. Ma Rainey's songs were very much ahead of her time and have even been said to influence modern day hip hop. She had a very unique portrayal of Black women and reflected a wide range of emotions and expressions, which was not very typical of that time. And throughout her very impressive career, she recorded over 100 songs in 5 years and was known for her dynamic performances with her songwriting, showmanship, and her very impressive and powerful voice throughout the 1920s. Yeah, now I'm gonna pass it back to Caitlin to talk a little bit about um, these women's Netflix films.
Yes, so if one of the things that pointed to us in this direction was those Netflix films. So I had the privilege of watching both Ma Rainey's, which is Ma Rainey's Black Bottom on Netflix, as well as Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker. And so in both films, these women take part in their story. However, some believe that Ma Rainey's Netflix film is not quite up to par with what we wanted to know. So I will talk about more about Madam CJ Walker's, as she was my woman. But her Netflix film I thought was very well done. It was a lot about how she had to go through society as a Black woman trying to break into the business of beauty, even if it was it's usually like it's a woman's product. There's still a lot of male dominance in there, and a lot of men didn't want to sell her a factory or didn't want her to sell things on their property, didn't allow their women to buy her products, and so she had to face that. And then she had to face the idea that she wasn't her people weren't the white women who didn't have a whole lot of money to spend on their hair, but she was able to use the culture and to use those beauty culturists and really bring customers to the table, and customers who were loyal to her, who wanted to have all of her products, because she understood them. She understood their hair, she understood what was in style, and she made an effort to really go into depth of what their needs were. So within the Netflix film or the Netflix series, she really brought to light the struggles of a Black entrepreneur and then the struggles of a Black woman entrepreneur. And so she really was portrayed by Olivia Spencer, who is hard-hitting in any movie that she's in, but here she really had to take a stand as Madam C.J. Walker, who had to put her foot down in many different situations. There was where she needed to assert authority in a place where she was a minority as a Black person and a minority as a woman. And I highly recommend watching it. It's a very good show. It really dives into what it was like to be an entrepreneur at that time, and to be a woman at that time, and to be a Black person at that time. So I would highly recommend taking a couple of hours just to watch it and see this amazing woman become a legacy, and to now be just a really big role model to a lot of younger people. And so I will bring it back to Ria to talk about Ma Rainey's, and then I might have a few tidbits too.
Thank you, Caitlin. That was a really nice review of the series, and I definitely will go and watch it now. Um, Gertrude Ma Rainey's Netflix film called Ma Rainey's Black Bottom seems to have a lot of mixed reviews from people. And I think the biggest concern, like I think Caitlin also mentioned before, was that it wasn't super specific to Ma Rainey's life, but it was a more general picture of what many people did face in the music industry and as Black artists. Um, yeah, that was one of the biggest reviews.
Yeah, I have to agree. While watching Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, I really wanted to know more about Ma Rainey herself. She seemed like this larger than life character that had a lot of different aspects to her. It wasn't that she was just a singer. It wasn't just that she was the mother of the blues. It was that she had to climb up from the bottom to be let into the white music industry. And so that's where it takes place. It's within a couple of hours of a day, probably like 3 hours total. And she's this great big personality, this great big Black woman who wants her own way because she deserves it. She deserves, she's the mother of the blues. She created this whole music industry, and the white producers are trying to get their own way. So it's really an interesting dynamic there. But in my own opinion, I don't think there was enough backstory to really figure out who Ma Rainey was, and what she really represented during this time. They really only skimmed the top. Um, but as Ria was saying, there was a lot of talk about how the Black musicians had to face racism and um, just everyday life as a Black man. But again, what our project is about the Black woman. And so another criticism of this movie was, here was a movie named Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, this woman who has so much power, and then she ended up almost being a secondary character in her own movie, to the other musicians. So I don't know if one of my criticisms was that there wasn't enough about her in her own movie. The other Black men who were playing the band really had more of a story to tell, it seemed. They didn't really pay attention to Ma Rainey, in my opinion, that her own movie was overtaken by Black males. And so one of our um, aspects of this project is really bringing to light that Black women were a part of history and that they deserved to have their story spoken. And one of the criticisms is that hers was just not spoken about in that movie. But we wanted to thank you for listening to our presentation. Hopefully this gives you a little tidbit into Black women of history through the Lemon Project at William & Mary. Feel free to do a little bit more research, have some fun, watch some movies, get to learn a little bit more along the way. But yes, thank you. Hopefully, Bria, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, that was very well said. Thank you so much for watching, and we really hope you do look more into these incredible women, because in the time that we had, we couldn't possibly cover the extremely dynamic and incredible lives that they did lead. And they did set a big example for a lot of people. And I think with this project, like Caitlin also mentioned, we just want to make sure that we're acknowledging and we're giving credit to the incredible Black women in the past who have not conventionally not been paid that much attention to. So yeah, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.